Hey guys, welcome to another installment of Lord of the Flies. Today we'll be discussing chapter 5 and 6. So right off the bat we see the contrast between the two chapters. The first one being called The Beast from the Water, and the second one being The Beast from the Air. So today we're going to be focusing mainly on what is the beast and how does that factor into the ideas of civilization and savagery. So to start, some context to the novel. Ralph calls a meeting to the boys, so they all sit down. He begins by telling them that they need to get their act together because all the things that they're supposed to be doing to contribute to society hasn't been done. The hunters are just hunting, which yes, that's their role, but they're letting it affect them to the point where their objective and constant goal for everyone is to maintain the fire, and they're failing to do that. Therefore, what's the point of hunting if we're never going to get saved? And so that's kind of the mentality of Ralph pertaining to the hunters. The second thing is the Littlins. They don't have much responsibility. However, what they're told to do is help gathering berries as well as helping build some huts. He says they've been failing to do that, and so he feels as if he's the only one that's trying to maintain some sense of order and some sense of civilization. Obviously, the metaphor about the fire being that connection to the outside world is continuing to lose its effect. The first time the fire went out was a big altercation, and now what we start to see in chapters 5 and 6 is that it's almost commonplace. And so what we see here is the hunters, although they have that connection to civilization, it's starting to become less and less effective. So that's kind of the beginning part of chapter 5 as it pertains to the roles of civilization. So we see only Piggy and Ralph paying attention to the actual importance of civilization, whereas the Littlins don't really understand. All they want to play in is take from the government. That would be the metaphor. The commonplace, just common people wanting to take from the government its entitlements, however, not contributing to society. And we have the hunters who are more focused on the power and the adrenaline of hunting as opposed to that connection to civilization. So now let's talk a little bit about the beasts. So in chapter 5, they mention the beast coming from the water. It's a Littlin that says that, and although it's not necessarily true, I mean, there is no necessary beast, but the importance of it being said that it came from the water is twofold. The first is the more story-driven rationale, and that is because they're looking for the beast, yet if it's in the water, they can never reach it. It just appears and disappears. It has control over when it's seen and when it's unseen. And so that's kind of the metaphor of the story-driven representation of the beast is we can't attack it, we can't find it because it's in the water. And what do they have? They can't go in the water. The hunters can't hunt in the water necessarily. The second is more of the metaphorical representation of the symbol. The symbol is this idea of savagery and terror and fear that comes with the loss of civilization, anarchy, an authoritative government. And so the symbol here is it can be represented as the unconscious. The beast comes when we least expect it under that surface. It pops its head and then it goes back, pops its head out and goes back. And so the water represents this unconscious mind in which we can't control, and we only see glimpses of it. It could be represented in the Freudian sense of the id, meaning we have that inside of us, but we don't control it. It's only seen when it is necessary, or when we allow it to be seen, but we don't necessarily control it. It's outside influences that can cause it to be seen. So that's kind of how chapter 5 works. And now let's talk about how the hunters interact with chapter 5 and its conversation of the beast from the water. What he, meaning Jack, says is that the hunters, if they see the beast, they'll kill it. what we see here is Jack understands that there's probably no beast, and so does Ralph, and so does Piggy. However, Jack doesn't necessarily say it's false. He did at the beginning, but now what he's doing is he's manipulating the fear of the Littleins to show power. He's appealing to what they believe is true, and of course he can kill an imaginary thing because it's imaginary. There's nothing to kill. So all he has to do is pretend he's killed it, and then he is seen as the hero. Ralph, on the other hand, rejects that notion. He doesn't want to entertain these pretend thoughts because that's not how a society functions correctly. If you're constantly focusing on something that's false, you're distracted from the main goal, which is civilization and progress. So now we start to see the power shift a little bit. We have Jack run off with the other boys, and they start chanting and dancing. And all who's left is Simon, Ralph, and Piggy. And Piggy tells Ralph, hey, call them back. And Ralph doesn't, because he knows that if he calls them back and they don't come back, he's lost complete control. So he's going to allow them to leave for the sake of having that power of, okay, I let you leave. Or if he calls them and they don't return, that sense of authority is completely gone. Now let's talk about Chapter 6. Chapter 6 starts off with this narrative of warplanes flying off in the sky and a parachutist falling to the sky, getting tangled, and all of a sudden we have a beast. We have some visual representation, other than the Littleins pretending. They have a visual representation of some sort of beast. Now let's talk about the importance of having a parachutist in the war be important for that. It puts us in the larger context of the novel. Remember, this is taking place during World War II. So it's commenting on, yes, the boys are here, but they're also the product of the war. They're children during the World War II campaigns. And so it calls attention to Golding's direct message, which is, yes, these kids are representing the evil and the struggle for civilization and maintaining civilization well. An authoritative figure rises up and says, I'm going to kill something that's not necessarily evil, but he pretends it is, as almost a scapegoat. This is a direct comparison to the Nazi movement and the Soviet Union and all of those authoritative governments that rose during the World War II time period. So to have a visible beast be a parachutist in war shows that his claim is the beast is the ability for humans to fight and to kill one another. So that's kind of how the beginning chapter ends. Now we go back to the actual narrative of the story. And so they claim they see a beast. Sam and Eric do. The fire went out again. Shocker. This is to represent, again, this not necessarily the importance of the connection to civilization anymore. The hunters don't really care. They do their job, but if it goes out, oh well. But what we see here is Ralph going up to the mountain, as well as all the other boys, except for Piggy and the Littleins. Again, representation of what that means. The rationality is staying marginalized with the young. And they go up, and Jack is too scared to cross on the cliff. But Ralph goes. Again, this again is his attempt to assert authority. And once he crosses, then Jack joins them. And everyone starts playing and dancing and having a good time. And then we see this bond slowly connect back between Jack and Ralph. They seem to agree on some things, which is good. However, when Ralph goes, okay, we're not here to play, yes, it's fun, but we need to go back to the reason we're here. The boys are upset and then do what's they're said. Again, that authority is built based off of the perception of power. Since Ralph was the first to go, he then still had that claim, and not all that power is lost. He still has some authority. However, Jack is slowly gaining in on it. It's almost as if they've become equal at this point. And so, what are the important things to know in these two chapters? First, that the beast represents terror and represents the inherent ability to have evil in us, whether it's subconscious, the beast of the water, or rather it's a direct societal influence, such as the war, the beast of the air. How does Jack manipulate language and manipulate the perception of power to then gain power over the one who has the actual authority? And how is the actual authority able to be marginalized to seeming that they don't have power by rejecting and not appealing to the needs of, or the apparent needs and fears, as opposed to the actual needs and fears? So with that, have a great day, and I'll see you next week.